We all need a little comfort sometimes, right? A hug from someone, just reaching out and feeling comforted to ease your pain. It's been quite a week, quite a quarter, and here we are, spring. So welcome to Sunday service here and online. Today I wanted to talk about what we're planting. It's springtime, right? I planted a bunch of bulbs in the fall with the thought that in the spring they would come up, fed by the water of the snows, which we barely had any. But it was enough. Today I counted 13 daffodils on my hillside. But there'll be 100 more. Because as we celebrate spring, it's a time for planting, a time for being able to look out and say, what do I have? What am I planting? The vernal equinox, of course, the time when day and night balance. And it's also a time in the old days when the year began. Not in January, when it's still cold and it's dark, but in the spring. Because the zodiac, Aries was the first to meet the flame. And so we are now into just the beginning part, the very cusp of Aries. So what thought and action are you planting as you go about your life? That's what we'll talk about today. Because what we know in science of mind is these thoughts are things. And what we think about grows. So it's important to notice, what am I thinking about? If any of you are like me, when you meditate, you wonder, who's doing all this talking in there? And if you say, stop thinking, then what happens? You say, hey, what do you mean stop thinking? I always think. There's thoughts. But we can become mindful of what we are doing and therefore plant something consciously rather than allow it to unconsciously grow up in some random direction. So what am I planting? I hope to be planting loving thoughts, not the confusion of the unconscious mind. So it's time to sow new seeds. Seeds that will grow up to become our life that we're living, what we want. Because we know that the creative process, as demonstrated in our teaching symbol, is that we put a seed in the soil, we allow the soil to do its work, water it, nurture it, maybe have to do some weeding, and we will reap the benefit of what we sow. So too with our thoughts, because every single thing that you see around began as a thought. This cool microphone with its wireless capability. Someone said, why do I need these darn wires that I have to worry about? Or the amazing internet that miraculously sends these words out all across the globe. The chairs we sit in, someone thought, wouldn't it be comfier if I had something to lean my back on rather than this darn stool? Everything began as a thought. So Eckhart Tolle said in his book, The Stillness Speaks, when you pay more attention to what you do than to the future result you want to achieve by it, you break the old conditioning. Then your doing is not only much more effective, but guess what? It's so much more joyful and satisfying. So if we can be in that moment, plant the seeds consciously, then we're going, hey, I'm a gardener after all. Now, sometimes I find myself flitting from activity to chore to, oh, I forgot this, and then the next thing I know, the day's over. Where did it go? What have I been doing? Have I been fully present? Or Did I get onto some autopilot, following what I did yesterday, doing the same thing? Isn't that what they call insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result? So if we want something different, we actually have to plant different actions and different thoughts. But don't worry, there's no benefit in getting upset with yourself, saying, "No, quit doing that." It's just like meditation. You don't go with a little puppy you're training and beat it just because it didn't go on the paper where you thought it should. You just bring it back to the paper. So too with our minds, we just lovingly bring it back and say, "What thoughts would you like me to dwell on, O Master?" Because the thoughts in our brains aren't our master, we're the master. So today is a good time to start. Why not now? So choose today to be grateful. Choose today to think some thoughts of loving kindness. Choose today to treat yourself a little better than you treated yourself yesterday. So I like to try and interrupt my little thoughts with positivity. And a reminder came to me that I should kind of be on purpose, remember my vision, live where I'm trying to be. And sometimes you have to revisit it because you decide, the direction I've been going, I'm not sure the results are as I expected. Don't worry. We can just turn and start walking another direction. There's so many directions to choose. Try another path. And so one of the best things to do, for me at least, is to go inside and take a listen. Because I might not have the best idea. It didn't work going that direction. So why don't I go inside and ask, what do I really want to be? Who am I? Take stock. And you can follow along in your chairs. You can take that breath. Who do I want to be today? What thoughts do I want to bring into reality, my life? Because you can no longer listen to all those old habits, those old beliefs. Instead, we know we can put new thoughts and visions, put them into the law, and they must become our reality. That's why they call it the law. It's not just a good idea, it actually works. Try it. And this one you can try at home. So Ernest Holmes says, we should daily feel a deeper union with life. Feel a deeper union with life. And a greater sense of that indwelling God. Because when we connect with that indwelling God, everything goes the right way. Because we're feeling better. We are feeling better in our heart. We're open in our heart. And so when we're open, we're feeling better, then guess what? The world around us smiles back at us. And we say, what a remarkable world we live in. It's like that song, that famous one, with the little children play. Isn't it a lovely world after all? But the creative process works whether we choose to work it or whether we allow it to work on us. So we can be at effect and say, oh, poor me, the world is happening to me, until we decide, no, I'm the pilot of my ship. I want to guide it so that the world is mine to direct. But sometimes things happen, right? And one of the first noble truths of Buddhism is that there is suffering. We heard it, will you come to me and ease my pain? We've all felt pain. And when someone is in pain, what you want is to have others not to come up and try and take it away from you, but instead to be with you in that pain. Because who hasn't felt it? So despite it being the first noble truth, the second one says, guess what? We get to do something about it by thinking the way that we're going to respond to that pain. I shouldn't try and run away from it, even though oftentimes that's what I want. I want to say, okay, enough of that. I'm going to just jump from, everything's fine. But it's not always fine. We call that a spiritual bypass, where we try and jump from one place to another without truly feeling what's inside, truly feeling what's in front of us. And that feeling, just like thoughts, they come and go. Any of you have gone through grieving, you know that, you can be up, you can be in anger, you can be frustrated, you can be sad. It comes and goes. So in addition to practicing mindfulness, I try to practice gratitude on a daily basis at night. Often before I go to bed, I think of what are the things I'm grateful for, and I have a little notebook and try and write down some of the things that I'm grateful for. And it's surprising, you start doing it, you think of all the things, like in the morning, boy, do I like hot and cold running water. Oh my gosh, are we spoiled? Nearly 1 billion people on the planet are more than 1/4 of a mile away from potable water, down from 1.5 billion in 1990. So we're going in the right direction. But you can see how there is challenge, and how we face it, what we do with it, that's the key. Now recently I had a very sad thing occur. My brother-in-law, a young man, left us. So we had a service for him yesterday. He lives in Wendon, Arizona, a little tiny town. You blink, you've missed it. It's on 60 between Aguila and Salome. And he's made a little life there. His renovation company impacted so many snowbirds, and so many people came to his service yesterday. And then he was a leader at his little church, little tiny Bible church there in Wendon, just a block he could walk from his house. We held the service in the auditorium of the elementary school, 2 blocks from his house, on the other side of the tracks though. And people shared about what he had done, and I saw he was a great example of someone who lived in the moment. He wasn't looking for praise. In fact, we learned things about him that we didn't know. Didn't know he'd been 10 years on the school board for the elementary school. He was just played Cat in the Hat, and all the kids called him Dr. Seuss. So they let out those recyclable or biodegradable balloons earlier this week in his honor, the kind that go up into the air. So we got to see his spirit of goodness ripple out, impacting an entire little community. And they came together, they brought food, we had music, and we celebrated his life. So that was a real way of realizing he planted something. He invented a salve that you could put on your skin. If your skin was healthy, didn't do anything to it. If your skin was unhealthy, it ate it away. So he made a difference. And if you remember from Emerson, he says, if only one life was changed by my being, then my life was a success. Well, Chris's life was a success indeed. And his little Bible church, they did a service for him as well. And one of them he had from his little Bible, he had underlined this one. He says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And he really is at home. And so we know that any of his pain, it's all over now. And so he's in a better place. But we still miss him. So sometimes I see how the desire to change things, I want to say, oh, well, Chris is in a better place. I should be happy. And we celebrated last night. We were. But then you notice it comes back like a little roller coaster, up and down. You feel it. And my desire to have it the way that I want isn't always the way the world works. But this is the way that we live, because we are flesh and blood. We're mortal until someone figures out how to be immortal. And sometimes I might deny my own needs, my own desires, because I'm thinking, oh, but that's selfish. But remember, if you aren't your own champion, who is going to be? You need to make sure that you're championing your own needs, your own desires, as long as they don't hurt anyone else. And in doing that, you plant a seed of joy, plant a seed of heartfelt openness. And that's something that everyone can feel. Sometimes you go into a room, you say, whoa, what's happening? And there's someone there who's just available. They've got that sense about them. You can feel it. So we are both human of this world and still spiritual, beloved children of God. Each and every one of us. Because each one of us is unconditionally loved. Just exactly who we are. No sense trying to be someone else. Those are already taken. But to be yourself, to be authentically you, that's the greatest gift. That's the greatest gift. Because you're here to fill your spot. So Ernest Holmes wrote in Science of Mind, we cannot come into the Father which art in heaven except through our own nature. Not someone else's. I don't want to be someone else. But through my own nature. And as I do that, then the world is given permission to be themselves. And that's powerful. And you know how it is, sometimes we greet each other lightly. Hi, how are you? Oh, fine, thank you. But we're already gone. We've already walked by. Because we weren't really expecting a response, nor were they actually thinking of it. Think of that as the difference between when you greet somebody with a namaste and you take their eye for a moment. Or Ubuntu in the spirit of Africa that says, the God in me sees the God in you. You don't have to then interact, but now they've been seen, you've been seen, and now you're both on the planet together. That's powerful. That's kindness. That's open-heartedness. But sometimes things burn out of control. A fire happens, Mother Nature comes and whooshes along with a tornado or a hurricane. Sometimes in our own minds we can have a hurricane or a tornado of thoughts and ruminations, and it's a storm. Where's it coming from? We don't have to know. It's like a cloud. It can come and go. But Eckhart Tolle says, when you are immersed in compulsive thinking, that storm, you are avoiding what is. You don't want to be where you are, but where we are is here now. I always like that, because if I come back to, oh, I'm here now, I'm okay, everything's fine. So you can remember the things that you do not like, and you can choose differently for the next time. You can remember the things that worked, do more of that. Doesn't mean we have to stop feeling, doesn't mean we have to stop caring. No, in fact, it means that we can do that and. So what seeds are we planting? And how do you control your thoughts? We had Karen Drucker come and run our retreat for the practitioners. And she said every morning she gets up and sings one of her songs. How lucky is that? You know, Like, get up in the morning and say, thank you for this day, Spirit, thank you for this day. Or go, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful. So every day, that's her practice. Before she does anything else, just to remind herself, hey, I'm awake. I'm able to guide my life. So we may not all have the singing and guitar playing and musical instrument but we can all be grateful for just that day, for this day now. And then in doing that, our seeds of purpose that we plant are in the present. They're with gratitude. They're with thankfulness. And so when I sow that way, then it doesn't fall on barren ground. Instead, I've tilled the soil a little bit, broken it up. I break it up with my song or my thought or my actions that get it ready. I can then sow the seeds, and as I sow them generously, I am aware and know that through the law, I must reap generously as well. Because, of course, I'm not going to just put the seeds down in the soil and say, okay, good luck. No, I'll come along and I'll water. And then if I see some things that I don't recognize, of course I have to be careful because I don't recognize, when they're small, it's hard to distinguish a weed from a flower. So you have to give them a little grace at first. And then it's also important what? To know what you're planting. Is this a watermelon that I planted? We had birds because we have a bird feeder, and one of the bird seeds that I put out there had corn kernels in it. Well, what happened? The next spring, I had all of these funny things. I said, that looks like corn. And I let them grow because they said, I wonder if they'll get kernels. And they gave these little tiny little kernels, little corn ears. Wouldn't recommend it. But I didn't think I was planting that, but the birds planted it. This morning, a hawk was on top of our bird feeder. All of the birds scattered. The blue jays up in the tree were squawking at it. So we see a lot in life. And so as I go about, I think about my thoughts, my feelings. And I know that they're fleeting, and if I just let them go, feeling them, not ruminating on them, then I'm happier. Things go easier for me. But be careful. Annie Lamott, anyone know the writer Annie Lamott? She said, my mind is a dangerous neighborhood. I try not to go there alone. This is why we need friends. This is why we need a practitioner. And life is short. Boy, that came to me in a heartbeat this week. Life is short. I wrote a poem. I was snowshoeing. There were my tracks in the snow. There was a boulder, huge, 20 feet tall, had 5 feet of snow on top of it. And yet it was just a tiny stone fallen down from the mountain mother. And the mountain mother sees us as we see a mayfly. Life is short. James 4:14 says, we are a mist that appears for a little and then vanishes. So if you got someone, give them a big hug, and when we're out there in Sibley Hall, make sure that you give hugs all around freely, openly, because gratitude opens the door. Our hearts connect. The way we are, our friendship, that's what we'll remember. We won't remember, oh, good, I spent an extra hour at work yesterday. But I touched a friend when they were in need. A friend touched me when I was in need. We'll remember that. So your call to action this week, This is your homework. Remember what's going on. Be present. Open your heart. Allow others to see you. Smile. And the world will be a better place. That is how we're going to have a world that works for everyone. That first song, kindness, prayer, love. Practice that this week. Oh, and every other week after. So let's take that into prayer. Corinthians 2 told us that one who sows generously will also reap generously. So I recognize that there's only one power. There's only one presence, one power of God and good and grace, and it's right here and it's right now. It's right with me as I speak. It's right with you as you listen. It is everywhere and every when. And since there is no place where this good, this God is not, it must be with us. It's with us now and in every moment. We cannot escape it. Thank God. And as we treat into that law, into that mind, into that loving grace, then we create a better life for ourselves. And this sowing of seeds, this harvesting of grace, this is the creative process of life. And we go through it every day. And we know that if we use it with loving kindness, then it comes back to us generously and overflowing. And I am ever so grateful for this knowing, for this teaching. And I just take these words and this message and I cast it into the power of love and law, knowing it is already done. I don't have to look and see it. The seed is growing. It's growing and it's magnificent. And together we can anchor that by saying, and so it is. And thank you for coming up.